Hi everyone, I'm Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. Today's session is on activating present memory in a dementia unit and the pros and cons of that. Now, activating present memory in a dementia unit is extremely difficult. It can be done though, and I will give examples of that, because present memory is the first thing to go, isn't it? With dementia and past memory, a lot of it can stay with the person. But I have seen examples of present memory being activated, and I'll give you an example of that. So there was one resident, and who was a very bright lady. She was one of the leaders in the group of the workshops that I took at the facility, and she took a great interest actually in remembering other people's names. Now, this wasn't so much a courtesy as it would be in our day-to-day life, but it was like an academic exercise for her. She was a great reader, she loved thinking, and this exercise of remembering people's names was actually quite a feat. I mean, in a dementia unit, to be able to remember people's names is a marvellous accomplishment, and she received accolades because of it. So what she'd do is she would sit in the group and look at everybody, and you could see her mentally, her cognition whirring, trying to see if she could remember the names. And if she couldn't remember the name, she'd ask the person, and then she'd go around the whole group saying their names, each person of about 10 people. And she'd do this exercise about 10, 12, sometimes 15 times a day. And sometimes the other residents used to get a bit fed up with it. But I used to say to them, look, it's good. You know, she's making the effort to remember names, and it would be good if you could make an effort too, by the way, rather than criticising. So they let her do it, and she did remember their names. And there was another lady who was a great sporty sort of personality. She'd done a lot of sport. She was very strong and vigorous. You know, she didn't have any walking aids and had good balance and helped other people in the unit when fights broke out, the only one that did. And she had 3 sons. And she was always trying to remember their names, but never could. She could remember the main son that used to come regularly. He was very supportive. And she could remember him, but she could never remember the name of the other 2 sons. And it used to really frustrate her. So the teacher saw this and started giving her little training lessons on how to remember her other 2 sons' names. So she'd get out a piece of paper, write the 3 names down, and then they'd practice it with each other. And this lady who was being taught, her son's names, would go around the unit repeating these 3 names with the piece of paper over and over and over all day. Anyway, so the day arrived when the 3 sons actually did arrive together, and she did remember their names because she recognized their faces. She just couldn't remember the names, but she did get their names, and they were astounded that, you know, here was her mother. She'd been like 3 years in the dementia facility, and here she was after that time remembering their names. So there are 2 examples I can give, but equally there was another resident who was very bright and intelligent, but he used to say to the whole group, look, doesn't matter if you don't have a memory, everything's done for us here anyway, isn't it? You know, cooking, cleaning, washing, everything. So we don't have to have a memory, which in a sense is true. So I think it's only really if the person's interested and wants to remember the names and is prepared to make a vigorous effort for it, that you support them in that. Otherwise, just let it go. But there was a daughter I noticed. She was a lovely lady. She used to come quite regularly, and her mother was a delight and had an excellent sense of humour. And she actually remembered her best friend's name at the unit, one of her best friend's names. And her daughter used to coach her in that. Oh, well, how is your friend? And she'd say the name. And then her mother would say back, yes, she is. And so the daughter would bring this resident's name into the conversation to prompt her mother with it. And so she remembered her best friend's name quite well because of that. And I would say probably out of about 30 people, about 3, maybe 4 residents would remember their best friend's name at the units. Their best friend's name, their new friends at the unit's name. So that would be probably the extent of it. I must say though, sometimes staff who are, very close to particular residents, often residents who don't have family visiting, and they sort of give them that extra bit of attention, and they will coach them in their name. And, now can you remember my name? And sometimes they do after this rigorous training. So it's sort of fun rather than an examination sort of session, which we don't want to get into. We don't want to sort of question or interrogate the person to see whether they remember your name or not, because that's just fear-inducing, isn't it? The stress goes up and then, you forget everything then. But in terms of just light banter, and if the person's interested, it's good. So these are just some ways around the present memory. Past memory, of course, most people tap into in a dementia unit. And the next video on this, I'll talk about how to activate past memory, which is much easier to do because past memory isn't as affected with dementia generally. I mean, it varies from case to case, person to person, but past memory is generally more intact than present memory. But still, present memory's it's like a very weak muscle, and it's physiotherapy-wise working with that. And as to whether you want to put in that amount of effort that you need to do to get any activation, that's probably more the question that you need to ask. So these are the aspects around present memory. Direction, orientation, and the person finding their rooms also requires a certain amount of present memory as well. And I've done previous videos on that, on helping people, residents, find their room with, practicing direction orientation techniques and making it easier for them to do that. That is important. That aspect of present memory / direction orientation is important, because for them to find, why it's important for them to find their rooms is because if they want to go to the toilet throughout the day and they know where their room is, then it's so much less stressful than, trying to find it and going around, from room to room and wondering where their room is. That's a very tiring, exhausting exercise and a very stressful one. Whereas if they know where their room is, they can go to the bathroom, they can lie down and have a rest if they need to. That exercise, that practicing of direction orientation and getting that memory bank going for that is an extremely important thing to do. And I've done a whole video on that, way back. I think it was about the 10th video, something like that. If you scroll back, you can see it. There's been quite a few videos going on here. I know, it's like 2 or 3 a day, but there is a lot to learn. And if you are interested to learn, then at least you can go back and see with all the various topics that apply to your relative, then you can pick up all these techniques. So that's the end of the session today on activating present memory within a dementia unit. Please pass on these links and information to others. I know you are. I can see that the interest is picking up, the views are picking up, and I really appreciate it. It's wonderful having that support out there. It's very encouraging, I have to say, really. So thank you for that. And the next video that I'm going to do is on past memory, activating past memory. So there's lots of wonderful techniques. So stay tuned and we'll do that next. Thank you.